Jesus comes first before myself. Jesus was telling Peter. So I talked to you about Judas, who was a deserter. I'm talking to you about James and John, and then now I'm talking to you about Peter. Jesus was telling Peter, "Truly, truly, I say to you, when you were young, you used to dress yourself and walk wherever you wanted. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and another will dress you and carry you where you do not want to go." This is said to show by what kind of death he was to glorify God. And after saying this, he said to him, "Follow me." So what's the point here? When you follow Jesus, it's no longer about yourself. When you follow Jesus, it's no longer about, can I fit God in my schedule? But rather, everything else, I'm going to try to fit in my schedule, and I'm going to prioritize the Lord. In our discipleship groups, this is how I say it. Following Jesus before ourselves is like this. If I am a student, and then I need to be awake at 7, 6 a.m., prioritizing Jesus means setting my clock a little bit earlier. Putting myself into a discipline of sleeping earlier. Prioritizing Jesus, focusing. If you're in business, this is how it's going to work. Before everything else, you would secure your relationship with God. How is it? Am I still reading? Am I still hearing from the Lord? Am I still absorbing what He's saying? Guess what? If you're not hearing anything anymore, you're probably not reading anyway. And then people say, I haven't heard from the Lord. Of course you haven't been hearing from the Lord because you're not reading. I want to know God's will. And then, have you read your Bible? I don't have time. How are you supposed to know God's will if you don't read? In the Sunday Bulletin, you have a devotional guide there. Please. Okay. If you're not reading scriptures, at least check one box. There's a date and then just check a box. Okay? It's there already. So you don't have an excuse of saying, what will I read today? It's there. At the back of your Sunday Bulletin also, there are small groups there that you can attend to. You don't want any of that? We'll create one for you. You want to create a Bible study in your office? We'll create one for you. Tell us the time and place. We're gonna fit that into schedule. Why? Because God is our priority. The business, studies, secondary. We don't have the option of choosing our assignments. We have to be like Peter. Where God leads us, we go. We don't have the option to make a decision for ourselves. It's always in light of what does God want us to do. Personally, people were asking me, "Pastor, if your contract in TLCC expires, will you stay?" And this is always my reply. I go where the Lord leads me. What about the work and all? I go where the Lord leads me. If the Lord commits me to this church for 10 more years, 15 more years, then I'll be here. Here's my question to you. God has called you here in this church right now. What are you doing? What are you doing? It's not enough that you just come on Sundays and be bench warmers. We ought to come to a point of being actively pursuing God. Jesus comes first before my reputation and pleasure. The last disciple that I would show you is the Apostle Paul. 2 Corinthians 6, he says, "But as servants of God, we commend ourselves in every way, by great endurance in affliction, hardship, calamities, beatings, imprisonment, riots, labor, sleepless nights, hunger." How many of you encountered all of these things already in your lifetime? How about this? 2 Corinthians 11. 5 times Paul received 40 lashes, less one. That's 39. Okay, 39 beatings at his back for 5 times. How many of you felt that for the sake of the gospel? 3 times I was beaten with rod. with rods. Once I was stoned, 3 times I was shipwrecked. Night and day I was adrift at sea. On frequent journeys, in danger from rivers, robbers, own people, Gentiles. And Paul was saying, these are the things that I encounter for the gospel. And he was saying, I'm not bragging about these things, but rather to point you to focus that we today are so comfortable compared to what Paul was enduring for the gospel. Okay. And if we turn off the air cons right now, how many of you would still stay? If there's a brownout, how many of us would still be here? At what cost will it be for us to follow Christ? It means forsaking what's comfortable. And this is my testimony in this end. When I approach people and tell them, do you want to know more about God? Do you want to study God together? Do you want to know, do you have an hour a week? I have more rejections because of the gospel. How many of us would be willing to tell our friends, do you want to know more about God? It's not, I bring you to church, but rather, let's do it together. Let's study this. Let's learn. It's not, do you want to know more about God? And your friend says, yeah, let's go to TLCC. That's not what discipleship is. Discipleship is this. Do you want to know more about God? Do you want to learn? Let's do this. Let's study. 1 hour a week. Instead of blaming the leaders of, why is he not doing this? Why are they? We would have to come to ourselves and check. Are we ready to put down our comforts and start talking with one another? We're almost full here at this right now. But how many of us have really come to a point of sharing your life with one another? As if I'm overwhelmed every time I stand in this pulpit. I would remember my own call when the Lord called me. You know what I said? No. I knew God was calling me. I was around 14 years old. It was in a youth camp. And when everybody was going to the altar call, everybody was going there, I sat. I said, no, I don't want to be a pastor. I'm gonna avoid at all costs being a pastor. I'm gonna avoid at all costs serving God. I want to be comfortable in life. And here's my mentality. Okay? How are you supposed to tell the parent of a girl? Okay? If you're in the process of courtship, you're gonna say, how are you going to provide for your family? And then I don't want my answer to be God will provide and stuff like that. Why? Because it wasn't real to me. So I was avoiding God's call at all costs. Forget it. I don't want to be a pastor. So, you know what happened? I spent 15 years of my life trying to run away from the Lord. Right? And every time it was God who draws me back. And when I stand here before you, I would always feel I don't deserve to be here. Because of what God has given to me over and over and over again. And when people come, I could relate to you. Why? Because I know of a God who forgives. I know how God has forgiven me. So when people tell me, Pastor, I'm a sinner, this is a sin. We're all sinners here. And it is God who draws men to Himself. Now I can stand before you, and this is my thing. I have tasted and have seen on how the Lord has provided for me time and time again. I survived 5 years of Bible school with, technically, the Lord was just the one providing. A story of I was in third year. I didn't have any sponsor. I didn't have any church funding me. I was just like I enrolled myself, and the cashier asked, "How are you gonna provide for your tuition?" And I said, "Well, the Lord is going to provide. I didn't want to say it out that way, but I know that He would, because He has called me to this. Okay. A few weeks later, I got a text, Pastor, I have a check for you, and I didn't even know the guy. Okay, and my brain was telling me, okay, I'm gonna receive 1,500, something like that. That my human perspective. And when the guy came and said, hi, okay, I'm from this church and a different church and all that, and when I received the check, lo and behold, it's 25,000. I said, what am I gonna do with this? I said, go enroll yourself, make sure that you're able to finish college. If you need anything, let us know. I'm like, I didn't even know the guy. Who am I? And I have stories like that time and time again, and that is why I know my God is gonna provide my needs if we follow. And as I look at this situation right now in TLCC, okay, of course we're focused on, can we pay the bills? Can we make sure that the programs are running? Can we make sure that everything is in order? Can we pay for the employees? Can we pay for the aircon, the lights, etc., etc.? If we do what God tells us to do, if we follow His words, if we do it ourselves and not passing it on to others, this is what I'm saying to you. God is gonna provide. But we have to come to a point of following Him. We have to come to a point of obeying His commands. Before I go to my closing, I have one song that I wanted to share with you, but I'm not the one who's going to sing it.